is getting rid of cards out of your hand, but Industrious Incisors can draw you a few more cards to help you try to get out of that lock. I believe our players are getting ready. Let's get down to the table and get to know these two players and hopefully see an exciting match here on the winning in round 14.
Let's go. The players are just getting started. They've got their active Pokemon ready to be revealed.
Yes, and we see one player ready to go and the other. I believe that's Mikey there on the right, Andrew on the left. I watched a couple of Mikey's games earlier on today whenever I was just kind of, roaming around the floor looking at some of the matches happening on, and I watched a Mew game where Mikey just absolutely shut the game down with Max Jammer. Nothing too crazy in either player's prizes. The Galarian Moltres V on the right side for Mikey might be a little bit of a little awkward. The Judge is also normally a pretty solid card. Those are going to be more relevant against something like Mew VMAX though, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal here in an Arceus matchup.
And the Judge being in the prizes like that just means that once you are able to get your hands on it later on in the game, it'll just be sort of the finishing blow, I think is what we're looking for. But Lumineon V starting on the active is not the best start, but as long as your opponent doesn't pop off too hard, you can recover from this very easily.
And this game is underway. Andrew Munoz is going first. On the left, Gengar V, the active Pokemon, and that's a tough starter for Mikey. That one Lumineon V. Oh, but Andrew just passes. No energy.
Nothing.
No quick balls. Nothing to get set up. No Arceus V. That is a very bad turn, and Mikey's already at a huge advantage here just by being able to bench an Arceus and put an energy card on it.
Yeah, essentially Mikey's going first here.
Right.
Arceus getting set up on the bench with double turbo energy. Another quick ball to discard that darkness energy. Going to take a look through the deck, take a deep, deep drink of what is available here for the win and in game one. You know these players are nervous, right? They got called up on stage.
Yeah.
All right,
time
to show everybody this sauce that you've been piloting all the way up through day one into day two here at Salt Lake City.
Mikey peeping through the deck here is going to learn that Galarian Moltres is prized. A little unfortunate because normally it's great to recover that energy like the one that was just discarded. But this is the Pokemon you really want to set up quickly. Malamar V, get it on the bench so that Malamar VMAX
just sends it right back with the Ultra Ball.
I guess it's not as important in this matchup compared to just valuing your Arceus initially.
Yeah.
So Mikey wants to thin the hand down a bit, use the Crobat. So discarding one Malamar is okay. You do play a second one. And it could be one of those situations where Mikey is checking to see if that second Malamar VMAX is in the deck. Once they realize that it is in there, they feel totally comfortable just discarding the first one and know they have a ton of searches. And look at this.
And the dark asset for 6.
Exactly how you want to draw it up. Thin that hand down perfectly, and 6 fresh new cards to work with.
And you know this is going to feel so bad for Andrew after having just a brick for turn one, seeing your opponent go off like this. Even with the Lumineon V in the active spot, everything else is set up on the bench. And this 2 prize Pokemon now in the active is just the floodgates, right? If you KO this, something else horrifying is going to come off of the bench and then start striking.
So we're learning that it actually is appearing like the 32 points is going to be a bubble. Ooh. So there's a chance that even getting to 32 is not going to guarantee you top 8, which is absolutely crazy. There's just been a lot of games played today. It's always hard to tell until we get to this 14th round what the actual bubble will be. It's going to be close, though. There might be a couple players that miss, but either of these
so much
players,
on the line just to be on the borderline of making that cut. But once the players are set up like this and they are zeroed in, they aren't worried about these points anymore. It's about the cards right in front of us here. Mikey just taking the chance to fully evaluate what the strategy is going to be from this position. How do I push this early gifted advantage?
Yes. Play your game. The situation is obviously important, but if you just value your setup, play what you've been playing for this entire tournament so far, you'll be just fine. Mikey does play the research. I think it might be looking for like an air balloon or a switch, escape rope, something like that. Wanting to get Arceus V in the active to use Trinity Charge on turn 1. Ooh, but I don't see a switching option in this hand.
Unfortunate. Discarded a lot of energies there as well. It's not as big a deal for a deck like this because you can search directly through the deck for the ones that you need, but just going to attach the Big Charm, looks like. And
oh, this hand is not very good for Mikey. We see the Big Charm thrown down. Drew a lot of energies. It looks like a Pumpkaboo and appears as the other card. Not a supporter we see all that often.
There. Mikey with a sort of half setup. Looked dangerous at first, but not quite able to press that advantage. Andrew might be able to have an explosive turn here in response to catch up. Plays Luminion V with that ability, allowing you to search through the deck for that trainer.
Yes, getting a supporter out of the deck, and just grabs Sharon's Care, which is a pretty interesting draw. That kind of signifies to me that maybe we'll see that just be discarded, because Sharon's Care is not doing much good right now, since it only can pick up Pokemon that are damaged and are also a colorless type.
And we did see that, of course, with Mikey's side, just getting that discard fodder.
Yeah,
to go with a quick ball
deck,
or something.
Thinning is winning in the Pokemon TCG, getting rid of cards that you don't feel like you'll need later, so you have higher odds to draw into good cards later on in the match.
At these caliber of players, they're just, at this point, it's second nature to them to maximize these percentages. Sharon's Care in the hand, and
there's a Tool Scrapper.
Tool Scrapper.
A pretty interesting tech that we don't see that often. It allows
Scooping
you to
up
discard
2 big charms.
Yeah, discard
Good
2
value.
tools from play. And the Path to the Peak could really shut Mikey down quite a bit. And Andrew combos this with a Marnie, so that's why we saw the Sharon's Care grabbed, playing the Marnie. So now that Sharon's Care is not discarded, it's still in the deck, but it's on the bottom of the deck. You're not worried about drawing into a card that's not good for you at this point right now. Is there an Arceus? There is, and an energy to accompany it as well.
So finally, the makings of a setup finally beginning to show. Andrew building up the foundations here. Also got a Rangaroo hitting the board here on the bench.
Primate Wisdom can swap a card from the top, see if they can find something a little more useful.
Puts that back on top, and just another energy, just looking for in a pass.
Yeah.
Again, both players just putting the building blocks in place until one of them finally gets the combo, gets the advantage. Mikey, however, going back over with an Arceus in play, gets the V-Star evolution, potentially going to get this Malamar VMAX in play as well. Quick ball. What's the discard here, Chip?
It looks like Path to the Peak. Not going to utilize that since your opponent has one in play. You can not replace the stadium with one that already exists. And this is a cute tech here that Pumpkaboo could come in with its ability to discard the Path to the Peak from play, so you can utilize your own Starbirth. That could be huge.
Yeah, and Pumpkaboo used to be a pretty major player for dealing with Path to the Peak back in the day, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tech that people have played here and there since it came out in Evolving Skies, but it's kind of interesting to see it make its way all the way to round 14, and it's going to pay off huge for Mikey. We can see exactly why it is in this list.
Getting rid of that path, setting up to be able to use your own abilities, right? Luckily, Mikey was able to sneak in that Crobat prior, but you need to make sure you have the access to the abilities you need. But
and this is a great hand for Mikey. Mikey had pretty much nothing before the Marnie, and Andrew's Marnie bailed Mikey out big time. Professor's Research gets a fresh hand of 7. This is excellent.
And the Starbirth is still waiting now with Path to the Peak out of the equation.
And draws another Path to the Peak.
So you get your Starbirth, play your Path to the Peak, lock Andrew out of their evolution into the Starbirth.
Insane. Super good draws here from Mikey. Exactly what you want to see. The only piece missing from the hand right now is the switch. Needs to play either a switch or an escape rope to get Luminion V out of the active spot, so you can go with Trinity Nova. And I fully expect that to be grabbed here off of the Starbirth. We see the V-Star marker being flipped. Mikey has now to decide which 2 cards to pull out of the deck.
The deck is still pretty big. Tons of options available to Mikey, and I love the timing of this potential combo with the Path to the Peak.
Debating between the 2 here. Looking at the escape rope, looking at the switch. Switch would just let you move the Arceus to the active, and escape rope gets your Arceus active, but forces your opponent to switch as well. So Mikey may be taking a moment to look at the opponent's side of the field like, okay, do I want to knock out in a Rangaroo if that's what they send up? If they send up Luminion, that's a free 2 prize cards potentially. And if they send up Arceus, you'd be happy to hit into that before your opponent even gets a chance to Trinity Nova. It could be a pretty tough choice for Andrew if that is the switch card Mikey decides to go with.
Already in game 1, Mikey being presented with this massive fork in the road. How do I want to approach this matchup, this situation? Do I truly feel like I'm at a strong enough advantage here to push by taking these key pulls off of the Starbirth?
Yeah. and does go with the switch, and I like this choice. This makes sense. Save that rope potentially for later, and grabs Fan of Waves. That's a great card to prep in hand when your opponent is playing double turbo energy.
Yeah, the control aspect of we're seeing shine through from both players in this matchup, the way they're jockeying for position, is something that we have, I don't think, really seen yet on the broadcast. Players are just looking for their...
oh, and I think Andrew just scoops.
Ooh.
Andrew says, I'm done. This is too tough of a hill to climb, and Mikey is going to get the win here in game number 1.
Wow, I completely missed that timing. But as I said, the players from this position probably looking to scoop a little bit earlier than normal. They know that this is going to be a grindier matchup where they're just trying to finally get that positioning where you've got your opponent locked out with the path to the peak, with the Marnie, etc. And it looked like Mikey was the one who got that first.
I really like that decision from Andrew to just scoop the cards up. Your opponent had such a better board position. Malamar VMAX was being powered up there on the bench. The Arceus in the active was going to be powered up and, of course, attacking hard as well. You're so far behind. Even if there's a tiny % chance that you could win that game, you'd rather conserve the time so that you give yourself a chance to set up a little bit better. You know you're going to get to choose to go first here in this second game, and then hope that you can force it to a game 3.
And by saving the time in game 1, you have even more time to think about that line in game 3.
So we're getting a little bit of word that all of the top 4 tables have chosen to intentionally draw at this event. So the few players who have put themselves at 33 or more match points would be Zachary Cooper, Ian Robb, Daniel Lynch, aka Finnegan Lynch. Those 3 players are absolutely locked. Now we have a ton of players who are going to be at 32. Andre Chiasson, we've got Gabriel Smart, Andrew Kennett, Xander Perot, and then, of course, several other players who are playing it out to try to get to 32 match points. So we have a chance to see 3 players potentially bubble out of the top 8, and that is a tough place to be in. I've been there before.
Tragic.
I've gotten 9th place at a regional championships, and it feels very, very bad.
Yeah, I know. You can be proud of yourself for coming that far, of course, especially in hindsight, but in the moment, it's going to feel so bad to
as
bubble
a competitor,
out.
for sure. Players drawing their opening hands. It does
a mulligan
up here, So Mikey will get to start the game with 1 extra card. That is not what you want to see, as Andrew just giving your opponent more and more cards to work with whenever you're down a game, just giving your opponent a little bit more of a chance to get further advantage is not great.
Pulling out that die, keeping track of each mulligan, just crossing your fingers. I want my opponent to keep whiffing and give me more resources.
Okay.
Not a bad prizing here. That one Arceus V is a little bit of a shame, but early bosses or potentially being grabbed will allow you to push the advantage once you get that initial knockout.
Yeah, that boss being in that specific spot, that's usually the first prize card that players take. So as long as Mikey takes prizes in the traditional sense, that'll be a pretty solid card to find at that specific time. Let's take a look at the prizes here for Andrew. Anything too bad? Research, double turbo, choice belt, another research, and that Bibarel.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay though. It's still one of those lower prizes, so you can still set up the Bidoof and hope to take Bibarel pretty quickly.
That's fair. That's fair.
Not
the
too
double
bad.
research can be a bit clunky, but if Andrew gets set up well enough, the research will not be a high priority to play anyway.
And things are looking much better for Andrew already. Has an energy to attach to an Arceus V on turn 1, and also has an Ultra Ball to combo with it. Just discards a 1/1 Gengar line.
Wants to get the V-Star perhaps in hand, try to just go for that Starbirth immediately and just fish those attackers right back out of the deck into the hand.
Yeah, this could be a matchup where Andrew just wants to focus more on the Arceus early on, or maybe the hand is a little weak and needs to go for Crobat. I think that Crobat was just pulled to the front here.
Because you aren't hitting for weakness as well, you aren't worried about setting up the Gengar incredibly fast. It's more about just not letting Mikey bully you into such a dominant position the way we saw it in Game 1. So Andrew is just going for perhaps a more stable setup.
Yeah,
and the Crobat, as you said, was the choice.
So that hand must just be a little weak and is hoping to draw a few more things. And that's a great combo there.
Nice.
You effectively got to use your Ultra Ball for free. You lose the Ordinary Rod, but this is a matchup where games go pretty quickly. Ordinary Rod is kind of hard to get value out of later. Great time to just use it now, and it thins 2 cards out of the hand and puts those Gengar pieces back into the deck.
And now with those Gengar pieces back in the deck, once this Crobat V hits the bench with that Dark Asset ability, we might even draw those right back in, replay the Gengar V to the bench to set up for the evolution next turn.
Yep.
And here we go, drawing up to 6.
Should be 5 cards here drawn. Looking for a Gengar or an Arceus to bench, I would imagine. And there is you got the choice of either or both if you want them. Pretty solid draw for Andrew Munoz.
Arceus hitting the bench. Oh, just rearranging there. But still a little awkward, right? Nothing too wild going on on the bench. Just going to pass. This is a very solid setup, I think.
Much better than game number 1. I think Andrew will definitely take it. Now we'll kick it over to Mikey, who is going to try to mimic that as much as they can. Started that Galarian Moltres V, usually something that you just like to have on the bench to accrue energy throughout the game. Kind of a tough starter. Mikey's only switching cards are the 2 switch and the 1 escape rope. Actually doesn't even have air balloon in this list. So relying on finding one of those 3 pieces to move this Moltres out of the active.
A lot of decks too, maybe just realizing if I don't have a switch, maybe I'm just going to let my opponent take the KO, and by using a sort of value engine with the Arceus V-Star, I just have something all ready to go to just strike back and even out those prizes.
So Mikey could try and dig for the turn 1 Trinity Charge, which isn't a bad option, especially if you can bench a Malamar V, try to get that powered up. But you're kind of just putting your Arceus up there and almost allowing your opponent to get the first hit off. So depending on how strong the hand is off this research, we'll see what Mikey decides to go with. Does have the energy.
And hesitating on the path.
Yeah, there you go. Good
Dire
choice.
Flame Wings first.
Want to make sure you do that.
Good timing. I wonder how many people have made that mistake other than myself. I lock myself out with Path to the Peak all the time.
It happens. It happens. 7 cards off the research. See if this switches here.
Path to the Peak, Crobat V, concede.
There is no switch card in hand, so I'm not even 100% sure if Mikey would have gone for that Trinity Charge. It's just so risky to let your opponent get the first hit off on Arceus. And honestly, the Moltres taking a hit isn't super relevant. You can move it to the bench. It obviously becomes an easy 2 prizes at some point in the game, but you would rather force your opponent to play something like Boss's Orders than just let them get a free hit off on something you know you're going to be attacking with.
That is true. Ultra Ball comes through, needs to figure out what's the second card to discard for it. It's going to be Lumineon.
And I expect this to grab a Malamar V. I do believe the Malamar V Max was in hand as well as the V Star. Mikey's actually sitting on a pretty solid hand, it looked like.
Yeah, we have the Malamar moved up to the top of the deck. Just going to take a quick look, reevaluate what's still in the deck before we get the shuffle here.
Mikey's probably feeling pretty good about this spot. Not going to get off the Trinity Charge, but has an energy on a benched Arceus. You know, your Moltres is going to be able to absorb a hit from Andrew. Not going to go down. I don't believe Andrew has anything like the Galarian Zigzagoon. No, it does not. So could not possibly pick up a KO this turn.
Yeah, so the Arceus isn't going to be the main damage dealer, of course. We're just looking for value, looking for setup, and that is just going to be the pass over to Andrew.
And Andrew's got a solid hand.
So how do we take it? Yeah, after this strong setup from the previous turn, now we can start to capitalize.
And this is interesting. We've seen the double turbo energy. There's a Boss's Orders in hand. That could be solid to get a hit off on the Arceus.
So do we take out the Malamar here or the Arceus?
I like hitting the Arceus. That's what your opponent has 2 energy on. You know, they are definitely going to want to Trinity Nova this coming turn if at all possible. So getting this first hit off is pretty solid. And Andrew agrees.
And here's the acceleration going on to that Gengar V, going to set up for the next big attack, right? Just going to spread the energy around, keep things flexible.
And something Mikey hit by starting that Galarian Moltres has 3 Pokemon V in play, which means Fear and Panic for Gengar VMAX will be doing more damage in future turns. So Andrew only needs to put 2 energies on Gengar V.
There's the evolution. Path to the Peak still in play. None of these players can use their Star Birth yet. So it is starting to get a little bit awkward. Malamar VMAX evolution hitting the bench, but no energies attached just yet.
This is an interesting choice for Mikey. I think they're debating playing this Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball can go grab that Pumpkaboo. Pumpkin Pit discards the Path to the Peak, and then you can use Starbirth to go find yourself an guaranteed energy plus something like a Professor's Research, especially since Andrew's turn wasn't the strongest. Andrew did not play a draw supporter, only played Boss's Orders. It was still solid, but you know, sitting on 2 cards, it always feels bad to refresh your opponent's hand. Mikey's having a hard time making this decision, though, and it is definitely a close one.
Another fork in the road. We saw this presented once again in the first game, but yeah, what do you go for it? The Ultra Ball discard looks like that is going to be the play.
It's a tough choice, and but it makes sense. Now the question is going to be, after the Pumpkin Pit, after the discard of Path to the Peak, what are the 2 cards? One is almost certainly going to be a basic energy to guarantee an attack this turn. But what's the other one? It's got to be a research, right? To just draw through the deck.
And put on the top, going to take a deep look.
You could reasonably think about grabbing Path to the Peak to just try to lock your opponent out of using their V-Star power. But by doing that, you're leaving yourself with pretty much nothing.
So you're trying to just equalize from this point and maybe set up for a better swing once your Arceus V-Star goes down. Because as you said, Chip, it was so important for Andrew to get that first strike in.
Yes, getting the first hit on the Arceus V is huge. Now, Mikey will be able to fully power up the Malamar VMAX on the bench, which is excellent. And I think that is the reason that I really wouldn't mind too much just grabbing the Path to the Peak, being okay not having a draw card, which seems a little crazy to say. But and maybe that's the last decision here Mikey is making between Research and Path to the Peak, because that's definitely the card Mikey would love to find here, is getting another path in play. Oh, Fan of Waves also a potential option. And that is actually what Mikey's going to go with. Okay, not what I expected. Oh,
yeah, it's
still not totally sure.
So many possible decisions here, so many outs, so many lines being presented to Mikey, trying to evaluate all of them. And again, the early scoop in round 1 that Andrew took is also now benefiting Mikey, giving them that extra time to think, because Mikey clearly wants to take this game too, and is going to take as much time as they need to make sure that they're in the best position to do so.
Mikey does go with the Path to the Peak. I know it's a card that you need this turn, but this opens up the risk of whiffing an energy card. There are a lot in the deck. It would be a little unlucky to miss, but it is certainly possible. Is there an energy? There is at least the double turbo. Okay, so we'll still get a hit off this turn and power up the Malamar on the bench.
That's what needs to be done. Double turbo energy, so good for accelerating out these attacks, but you have to remember the damage reduction.
And it does stack, so these attacks will be doing minus 40 damage from this Arceus V-Star, since it has 2 double turbo energies attached to it now.
And there it is, the swing, and looking for the energies to accelerate onto the Malamar V-Max to set up for the next turn.
Still going to be solid. It still equates to a 2-hit knockout, 160 into 180, still plenty, so not too bad. And Mikey, maybe this Arceus will go down. Andrew should score the first KO here, but Mikey's going to have that big Malamar VMAX ready to go, and that is a scary sight to see. Ooh, thinking about benching another Arceus V, you got to be careful.
We just went for Evolution Incense to get the V-Star, but just discards it.
I think you got to be careful about putting too many Pokemon V in play when your opponent is playing Gengar.
because of the VMAX attack, right?
Right, yeah, Fear and Panic, of course, dealing 60 damage for each Pokemon V that your opponent has in play.
That's really going to scale out of control, especially in a matchup like this specific one, where the players are needing to put so many specific V Pokemon on the bench to get these important evolutions.
So just grabs the Crobat V, certainly not going to be playing it since that Path to the Peak is in play, and we'll just go with Trinity Nova. 160 damage, still solid, and 3 energies can be slapped onto the big squid on the bench.
And now, once that is attached, turn will go over to Andrew. And how do you press your advantage from here? There's not a lot of setup going on the bench. Maybe try to find the Gengar V Max off of a Marnie.
Yeah, huge. I think that if Andrew could retreat this Arceus or find a switching card, that would be great. Also finding a VMAX, just so you can take a knockout with something that doesn't have a bunch of damage on it. Try to force your opponent to find Boss's Orders.
With the Starbirth already used on Mikey's side, it will be a little bit more difficult, right, to get those key cards you need to really push the advantage, where in this matchup, the Path to the Peak, each side trying to wall the other one out with that effect, but we saw Mikey had that Crobat V, was probably going to hope for the Path to Peak to get removed from play and get that down somehow. But now Marnie is going to really flip the script on what Mikey's going to be strategizing around for the next turn.
This is a huge grab from Andrew, taking this turn to set up the Bidoof. We know that Bibarel's prized. Andrew knows it's prized as well. But whenever you're going to be taking a knockout, you're giving yourself a solid chance in order to take some prizes. And this is exactly what I wanted to see from Andrew. Retreat, force your opponent to find a boss's orders if they want to take a KO, and you're still going to net 2 prizes this turn.
And that should be the Bibarel, right?
Yes, if Andrew does take prizes in that conventional order we usually see, Bibarel was in one of those bottom 2 prizes. So that would work out very nicely for Andrew. Pretty well played.
Industrious Incisors, and that is an ability you're able to use while Path to the Peak is in play.
Yep, right away Bibarel is the grab, and research as well. Draw support
Tons
plus
of
draw through the ability.
Power being added to the hand. This could allow Andrew to push this early advantage, getting the first strike on that Arceus and then getting the finishing blow on it. Getting that knockout so strong here to have the makings of some tempo here in game 2. Andrew needs to bring this to a game 3. Because this is not even a win and in necessarily, but still so important for these players.
Yeah, win and give yourself a chance at this point, and that's what all these players, either of these players can really hope for. It's going to depend on who you've played against, what their match results have been, and how your resistance looks overall.
And Mikey feeling a little bit more pressure here, but fortunately having taken game 1 isn't under too much stress if this does go to a game 3. Still plenty of time on the clock here in Swiss round 14.
The win in the final round of Swiss. Winning at this point gives you a solid chance to make the top 8. Boss's orders.
Boss's orders. Going to get a swing back into that Arceus V-Star, no doubt the damaged one.
Yes, taking this KO. What is a little awkward here for Mikey is Max Jammer is going to get to remove one of these cards, but Andrew has 2 draw options in the hand, the Bibarel and the Research.
Yes, perfectly covered. Which one is going to go to the bottom?
It looks like the Research is the choice. And yeah, because you can deal with the Bibarel in the future potentially.
I was wondering, is there ever a weird world where you say, I don't care if you draw cards, but I'm taking away your escape rope?
Probably not in this instance. In certain situations for sure, but not at this point. Industrious Incisors will draw 3.
All right, up to 5 cards in hand. Got another Ultra Ball.
Has a boss.
Can discard the Path to the Peak. You don't really need it here.
So Andrew's prize map for the rest of this game is likely going to involve KOing the Pumpkaboo at some point. It's only got 60 hit points. Boss's orders on that is an easy KO pretty much at any point in the game. So that gets you 1 of your 4 remaining prizes, and then trying to just 2-hit KO this massive Malamar VMAX in the active, I have to imagine is going to be the way that Andrew tries to approach this end game. And sure enough, Trinity Nova dealing 180 damage and grabbing 3 energies from the deck. But
yeah, Malamar VMAX still very, very strong here, getting more of a lockdown, hopefully with that Max Jammer. So do you want to try to swing in with the Max Jammer again, try to keep your lockdown going? Or are you going to retreat this and again force Andrew to then find the boss?
I don't think Mikey has many options in this hand. There's no supporters to draw cards. There is the boss's orders, which could gust something up. You know, you could take a knockout on the Crobat to take 2 prizes, but then what do you knock out to close the game out? You can't deal enough to knock out an Arceus V. You've got 2 prizes, so Bibarel knockout in the end game won't really help you to close out your 6 prizes. It's a little bit hard to map this last couple knockouts here for Mikey.
And with the setup already completed on Andrew's side, right, with the powered up Gengar VMAX ready to go, there's no way to find that proper, weakness, some sort of niche for yourself to dig in and find that victory.
Mikey is flashing the boss. Is that the card that will be played? Really debating this choice. It is a tough one, and every single decision really matters in these instances. Boss's orders will be played. What is the target going to be, though? Do you just get a hit off on the big Gengar VMAX, or do you chase the prize cards by going after Crobat? Mikey favors the prizes. Maybe there's something they want to fish out of the prizes here, potentially. No, Mikey's just going to concede.
Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. The players know that if this is going to go to game 3, I need as much time as possible.
I like that decision from Mikey.
Yeah,
it was definitely
smart.
looking bad. So taking the time to go ahead and scoop, you've got 22 minutes left in this round. Honestly, knowing when to concede is one of the hardest things to learn in the Pokemon TCG. I think some of the best players in the game still have a hard time at doing it.
Yeah,
because it's hard
to swallow
give
your
up,
pride, right?
Yes.
You think that there's always going to be an out. I think as someone who's a fan of a TCG, you always have that what's around the corner, what could I possibly top deck? There's just that small percentage, and we talk about it so much in the Pokemon TCG, is playing towards those percentages.
Yeah.
But also you have to know when it's just not worth.
So knowing when to concede is always a tough choice, but both of these players have really done it excellently in this game. Andrew scooped it up when only 10 minutes were gone from game number 1, and Mikey scooping it up, leaving plenty of time for a game 3 to play out to completion. We'll see. After these 2 games, Adam, we've seen both players kind of have a little bit of advantage in one game or the other. Who are you kind of leaning towards to take this 3rd game?
That is really tough. I think that Andrew might have it just because if you get one Trinity Nova or one Trinity Charge off to set up the Gengar,
it's just so big.
That's a stronger lockdown potentially because you already have your pressure in play, whereas Mikey's deck is trying to put you into top-down mode and have more of a sort of theoretical control over the game.
Mikey will be a little advantaged here by getting to go first. And we'll see those prize cards of boss's orders.
Not too shabby. Doesn't look like anything wildly important.
Yeah, that boss being at the top means that Mikey likely will not have access to it for the entirety of this game. A couple of Pokemon in the prizes for Andrew, but honestly not too bad. You play multiples of all of these, so as long as you can find them, it shouldn't be too big of a deal.
I'm honestly really happy to see that, Chip. I want these players to go into game 3 without any sort of massive advantage on one side because a key piece was prized, have everything they need at their disposal. So here it is, game 3 for the win and potentially in Swiss round 14 at the Salt Lake City Regionals.
Mikey is kicking things off with a quick ball, not ever a bad thing to see. And by discarding an energy, that gives me a pretty good indication that Mikey's got more energies in hand.
I think very consistently throughout this set, Mikey has had a hand that's just a plethora of energy.
Yeah, has not had a shortage of energy, that is for sure. An interesting starter over there from Andrew is that Ditto V. A nice little tech in a deck like this that plays multiple different Pokemon V with its V transformation, which effectively just allows you to swap it from play with a Pokemon V in your discard pile. So it can be a way to get you that,
nice. Get something that
extra
got
Gengar,
out, or something that you sent there with your Ultra Balls, etc. Very, very sweet tech here.
And Andrew sees that Mikey plays a quick ball right away, and Andrew says, you know what? I can do that too.
And just to clarify, if the Ditto V were to transform into the Lumineon V, we miss out on the timing for that Luminous Sign ability. It has to come directly from the hand onto the bench.
That's correct. Yeah, Luminous Sign, many abilities like that only apply once you play. It's different, putting it from your hand to the bench versus just getting it into play. So does not quite work the same way.
But with an early Lumineon gone, you aren't looking for anything specific, so you don't want to get too cheeky holding on to this for the proper moment. You're just going to try to focus on what your hand is currently presenting to you as a player. And as we've seen in Game 1 and Game 2, both of these players considering every single possible line, even the ones that don't seem like they're going to make sense at the moment. Is there a way that this fork in the road will potentially lead to a victory, thinking so far ahead?
So Andrew discards an Arceus V, goes and grabs another Arceus V, and by discarding an Arceus V, that gives you the option to use this V transformation ability if you want to, and sure enough, Andrew uses it. Now that Arceus V is in the active spot, only needing a double turbo energy to get off a Trinity Charge this turn potentially, and has the path to the peak. This is a super solid hand here from Andrew. Does have to discard an Arceus V though.
Yeah, just goes for the professor's research, get fully loaded for the next round, maybe find a little bit more reinforcement for the bench.
And there's that double turbo energy, the missing piece, the one thing Andrew wanted to find. We know Mikey is packing a ton of fan of waves in their deck list.
Yes, and Quick Ball finds the Gengar V to be the recipient of this energy.
Attached to the active, Trinity Charge. Even has Guru if they want it, but I guess not going to worry about drawing anything else, and the card you put on top would just get shuffled after the Trinity Charge. So
very true.
No worry about it, it seems, and we'll see where Andrew puts these energies. I expect the split, and that looks like that is
we did see that in the last time, where you just split the 3 energies, keep yourself flexible in case you need to do another Trinity Charge, another Trinity Nova. And now that you're set up, you don't mind this Path to the Peak being in play. It's not locking you out the way we saw Mikey do it in that first round.
That's a lot of energies on that Arceus V.
Oh, okay, hang on a second.
So that might lead me to believe Andrew's looking to retreat this in future turns and wants to leave all these energies on it. That is definitely a very interesting decision, but it makes sense, honestly.
Having a bigger potential threat in the active with an evolution into the Trinity Nova to get that 2-hit knockout.
We see the Adventurer's Discovery being played here. Kind of a nice little tech supporter that we see pop up in these V-heavy decks every once in a while. It allows you to search your deck for 3 Pokemon V and put them in your hand. And of course, that counts V-Star Pokemon and V-Max Pokemon.
Very nice. We saw Mikey, I think, actually discard this in the first 2 games.
That's right. So
here in Game 3, the Adventurer's Discovery finally seeing its purpose fulfilled.
I don't think Mikey has a great hand, though. If you're using Adventurer's Discovery and you don't have a Switch and a double Turbo Energy in hand, it is not looking great for you to get off a Trinity Nova this turn.
Yeah, we would need to see the evolution maybe into that Pumpkaboo combo to get the Starbirth through, find those final pieces.
Find a way to get that Path to the Peak out of play, because that is what is shutting down the Starbirth right now.
And I mentioned it before where Mikey was a little bit safe, felt very calm in Game 2, but here in Game 3, 15 minutes left. Both players searching very deeply through the list for these key pieces, eating up a lot of time on the clock. We could see a bit of an acceleration in play here.
Oh, Mikey's hand isn't good.
Exactly.
Mikey's got nothing. There's no supporters. It's a bunch of Pokemon and 2 Big Charms.
Oh, no.
So Big Charm can give your Pokemon more hit points, but
I think that Andrew's, like, the way the numbers are lining up, even with the double turbo energies, it's lining up against those 2-turn KOs, right? You have the Big Charms to prevent these massive single swings from a VMAX or a Mew or something, but a deck like this, as we've seen in this specific matchup, wants to set up these 2-turn KOs, can be a little bit problematic for this tech.
Mikey was having a hard time deciding whether or not to evolve into that Malamar VMAX. Does decide to go with it, give that Pokemon a lot more hit points. You do open yourself up, of course, to your opponent now being able to 2-hit KO a 3-prize Pokemon, so getting 3 prizes for just taking 1 knockout. And with 14 minutes left, Andrew definitely wants to make sure that this game completes.
Primate Wisdom gets an energy.
Not too bad. Needing an Arceus V-Star, and Ultra Ball can easily find that.
There we go, get the V-Star off the Ultra Ball. Whatever was put back on top from the Primate Wisdom will get shuffled back in. Obviously, it's not a card that you are going to miss. Andrew is worming their way into a very, very powerful advantage here in Game 3, into a research.
Super strong, 7 fresh cards, no painful discards either.
Just get that right out of the hand. The players have demonstrated the ability to properly thin their hand and sequence into these researches, and even making cards like Single Strike Mustard suddenly pop off because of the ability to sequence here and set up these combos.
Trinity Nova comes out dealing 180 damage. Now energy can be spread onto these Pokemon, but actually only finds 1. What is Mikey top deck? Oh no, it's a Fan of Waves.
Oh, all of the tech choices showing up here in the hand when they're not needed.
Not great.
Even though there's so much time left on the clock, it doesn't matter when you have nothing to do on your turn.
And this is exactly what Andrew was playing around as well. By putting the basic energies on the active Arceus V-Star, they're playing around the Fan of Waves. So even if the fan comes out, you can still pull off an attack. Super heads-up play from Andrew. I didn't even notice that earlier in the game, but yeah, Andrew has made the presumption that there's a bunch of Fan of Waves in Mikey's list. So great heads-up play from earlier turns that have paid dividends at this point.
Having the ability to read your opponent's tech choices and preemptively route them out so strong here in round 14 of the Swiss. Andrew definitely demonstrating, how they got to this position, 9-2-2.
There's some industrious incisors coming out, drawing 3 cards from the top. We've seen Gengar VMAX hit the bench, a switch in hand, but no other Pokemon are quite powered up and ready to go yet. Trinity Nova can take this 3-prize knockout. No energies left to accelerate. And Mikey is just hoping at this point, please let this top deck be a supporter. Let me play something. I just want to play the game. Let's see if it's something that's
top deck,
useful.
Pumpkaboo, get this Path to the Peak out of the way.
It's a switch. That's nothing. It's nothing. Mikey can do nothing. Has to switch into the Arceus. Puts a big charm on it to give it a little bit more hit points. But Andrew's advantage is just too great at this point.
You just have to get, it's the complete opposite of these deck strategies. Mikey's the one that's trying to set up the Malamar and put their opponent in top deck mode.
Yeah, Mikey's supposed to be leaving the opponent with no cards in hand, and that's just not what's happening at this point.
And if you're Mikey, you're like, okay, I can buy one more round. This Arceus V is going to take some damage.
Deck, double turbo. Yeah, it's just, this is not good. You can attack next turn with Trinity Nova. I mean, what are you going to power up the Crobat? And you can see the body language. Mikey is feeling defeated at this point. You're winning in, and your deck just does not function for you on the third game. Feels so bad, and Andrew is just firing on all cylinders. And I can't help but remember back to game one when Andrew conceded super quickly, said, I'm not going to play this one out. I can't win.
10 minutes on the clock,
plenty of time.
Revealing themselves here and paying off.
Ultra Ball just thinning the hand down a little bit, has Choice Belt as well to boost some damage. Trinity Nova takes an easy KO. Andrew Munoz goes to 1 prize left.
And gets the Gengar and the Gengar V Max out of the prizes here.
And it's another switch as the top deck. Absolutely nothing happening here for Mikey.
Oh, 3 top decks in a row. We're looking for something to get this Path of the Peak out of the way. We need that Pumpkaboo so we can get the Starbirth going through, search for those 2 key pieces. If you had the ability to pull 2 cards directly out of your deck, you could very easily turn the situation around, but
Mikey is, maybe if Andrew doesn't have any other energies, because there's not enough energy on these benched Pokemon for them to be able to attack, and we haven't seen energies accelerated off of these Trinity Novas. So if Mikey can take this knockout and somehow Andrew just doesn't have energy to attack, I mean, you can't win this game. You can't take the last prize if you can't attack. Oh, but there's a double turbo energy.
Oh, my goodness.
Slaps it down.
I was actually getting a little bit worried when you were laying it down like that, Chip.
That energy is all that Andrew is really going to need to close this out. Gets a big hit in. I don't know if I love this retreat, though, because this opens you up to getting Fan of Waves. Now Mikey can use the Fan of Waves. Top deck's Lumineon, no good with the Path to the Peak in play, but that puts this energy back into the deck, and if you don't have a switch card, you now can't attack this coming turn.
Is Mikey going to do the impossible after essentially having to do nothing for 3 turns in a row?
Andrew brings the switch right to the front of the hand. Has it right there, shows it to Mikey. The game is over. Andrew Munoz winning in round 14, putting themselves at 32 match points, and now just hoping that that'll be enough to get into the top 8. What a match.
What a set of games here at the Salt Lake City Regional Championships for 2 similar strategies to go head-to-head, and both sides were able to demonstrate what that deck was meant to do, and with some surprises sprinkled in.
Very well played from Andrew. Very well played from Mikey. You got to feel so bad to see draws like that, especially considering the situation on stream, round 14, on the win and in. Such a cool deck. Massive props to Mikey on the tournament run. Got to watch some of their games earlier today. It was a lot of fun to see those Max Jammers just putting in work against Mew VMAX decks. Just didn't quite pay off here in this last round. The Gengar Arceus deck from Andrew Munoz, putting themselves at 32.
Yeah, pulling it off. I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier,